E-Day is fast approaching and it's looking like a pretty good game, and hopefully it will explore some more of the events that took place on the day that completely destroyed the planet of Serra. So instead of some long-winded introduction about what we will be exploring, let's just dive into it immediately and tell the story of our main protagonist Marcus Fenix and what his life was like before Emergence Day. This is the story of Marcus Fenix before E-Day. Emergence Day was, obviously, such a significant period in Serran history that it now changed their whole calendar, and because of that fact, everything before E-Day is recorded as BE before E-Day, and everything after is of course AE after E-Day. With that in mind, Marcus Michael Fenix was born in 22 BE in the capital of Tyrus, Etheria. His father was a major within the coalition of ordered governments named Adam Fenix, and his mother was a skilled scientist who worked as a biologist at La Cruz University named Elaine Fenix. Marcus was an only child and had a pretty privileged upbringing, being raised in Haldane Hall and being taught by private tutors, as well as his parents, who had a ton of experience in their fields. His relationship with his mum was also really close, as she would take him on regular trips to the mall where he could just be a kid and explore to his heart's content. Also, whilst Elaine would continue her research, which would be extremely close to where the locusts were living within the Hollow. Whilst Marcus was growing up, the Pendulum Wars had been going on for over half a century and no end ever seemed to be in sight. By the 62nd year of it, Marcus was around 5 years old, and unfortunately for him, he was about to witness his dad leave for the war as he was being shipped out to the region of Kashkur. While sad about his father leaving, Marcus was now old enough to understand where he was going and what his job consisted of. But as the day got closer and closer, the more Marcus became upset with the idea. As that date came nearer, Marcus was visited by Adam while sitting in the library and reading a map book, and was asked to come with him for a walk. During this, Marcus asked why he had to leave once again, and it was here where Adam explained what the duties of being a gear ultimately was. It was about going where you were asked to go, being there for your friends, and supporting your comrades on the battlefield. That last point seemed to hit hard for Marcus. It seemed to mean a lot to him, and upon hearing it, immediately responded to his dad by saying, "I'll be a gear too then." Adam admired his son's passion for being a gear, however stated to him that he probably won't have to be, as the war would be over by then. But simply stating that upset Marcus once again, as he had become super focused now on becoming a gear in his future. Whilst they continued to walk and talk, the two reached the gardens where Adam revealed to his son that his mother had discovered something that was groundbreaking. No pun intended. Whilst exploring the Hollow on her travels, she had uncovered what he simply named as being monsters. However, upon hearing this, Marcus immediately hit back and said that monsters don't exist, and if they did, Adam would kill them all. The two continued on again as Marcus went on to name every single plant within the gardens, and with that, then went to lunch with both of his parents, making the most of their time together as a family. Several weeks later, Adam had been deployed and Marcus started his schoolwork for the first time, whilst also trying to make sure he knew where his mum was at all times as well, probably because of the monsters his dad had told him about. Months went past and finally Adam returned home, but this was because of a leg injury he had sustained during the Battle of Ragini. Marcus immediately ran to greet him as any child would, but before getting to him, slowed down, checked himself and gave him a formal greeting. Welcoming his father back, Marcus asked if he had saved everyone when on his mission, but Adam stated that sadly he had been unable to do that, but he would now make it his life mission to make sure he saves everyone going forward. Marcus seemed to want to question this, not really believing what his father was saying, but before that could happen, Marcus was asked to show Adam some pictures he had drawn by his mother. With Adam now at home working on a way to end the war once and for all, Marcus, now at the age of 10 years old, 12 years before E-Day, was sent to the Olafsson Intermediate School. The reason for this was because his parents felt like he needed to mix with regular people after having been homeschooled with tutors for a couple of years. On his first day, Marcus was asked to introduce himself to the rest of the class, but this did not go down well at all. Several of the class members quickly clocked that he'd come from a rich background and immediately resented him for that very fact. However, one kid named Carlos Santiago quickly jumped to his defense and actually protected him when he was at lunch from all of the other kids. This really meant a lot to Marcus, and because of that, he knew he needed Carlos around him, with one example of this being where he chose him to be on his team during a thrashball game in gym class. Marcus also impressed people during this, but this made things worse for those who resented him, as one kid named Joshua Curzon tackled him harder than anyone needed to. Carlos was worried about Marcus and went up to him after, but Marcus quickly replied that it's fine and he should just forget about it. But Carlos was quick to say back that the other kids are taking this too far and it wasn't fair that they are picking on him. With that, Carlos immediately started attacking Joshua and his older brother Roland, leading to Marcus joining in as well to protect Carlos. During this attack, Marcus grabbed Joshua by the collar and slammed him into the ground, and then followed that up by punching Roland hard in the face, also getting punched back as a result. Scared by the ferocity of this new rich kid, the Curzons backed away, which led to Marcus stating they better leave him and Carlos alone in the future. After the two left, Marcus helped Carlos off the floor and immediately asked if his eye had formed a bruise yet, because he was worried his father would spot it and become worried about him and the school he was at. Carlos advised Marcus to tell his dad that it was a thrashball incident, but then questioned why he was at regular school in the first place. Marcus responded to that, stating they wanted him to mix with regular people because he was on his own a lot of the time. The two continued to talk throughout the day and the days following, and became closer and closer, eventually meeting Carlos's brother Dom, who also formed a close relationship with Marcus. 3 years passed and Marcus started spending a lot more time at the Santiago household, playing with Carlos and Dom, but also helping out around the house. During this specific day, they were working on Carlos and Dom's dad's engine, their dad being Eduardo Santiago. The group all got along, ate lunch with them, and spoke about Eduardo's time in the Gears, in which he spoke about how he loved being out there with his friends, but now he's glad to have a steady job and a loving family. At the same time, Carlos stated he was excited to join the army when he was old enough, which worried Marcus because he did not want to be alone once again, and with that also thought it was his goal to join as well. During that conversation, Mama Santiago, Eva, answered the phone and immediately told Marcus it was his dad passing the phone to him. As he answered it, Marcus was told that his mother had disappeared and that he was coming to pick him up immediately. Days passed and his mum made no appearance. Marcus did not attend school because of it, but eventually went back to talk it out with Carlos and Dom, as he went on to say, "I don't think she's coming back." Marcus also went on to explain that the police were looking for her, but his dad would not tell him where she had been when she disappeared, bringing about a lot of questions. Marcus believed it was because of him that she had left, but Carlos and Dom quickly shut that idea down. By Marcus's 14th birthday, Elaine was still missing, and because of it, Marcus had stopped talking about her, and on top of that, started to spend far more time at the Santiago's house. By the age of 19, Marcus finally pulled the pin and decided to join the COG army as a regular soldier, rejecting officer school, which he could have been a part of thanks to his dad's connections. By this point, Carlos had already joined up, and with his help would go with Marcus and go and tell his dad, not knowing what the response would be. Before going there, however, Carlos wondered if his joining was the sole reason for Marcus signing up as well. Marcus stated that he had made his mind up years ago and it was always going to be this way. When entering the family estate, the two found Adam in the front room, and Marcus told him they needed to talk. Marcus went on to explain his plan of joining as a regular soldier, but Adam quickly hit back, stating he was going to ruin his life and completely throw away a college education. As the two argued, Adam turned to Carlos and asked him to talk some sense into him, but Carlos instead replied he would not do that, but would make sure he kept Marcus safe at all times when out there. Realizing there was nothing else he could do, Adam accepted his decision and eventually gave his support, and after that, the two left the estate, saying a final goodbye to Adam. Whilst at lunch, Carlos revealed to Marcus that Dom was marrying his girlfriend Maria because it was revealed that she had become pregnant. Marcus was shocked with this revelation and immediately offered financial help for the wedding, in which Carlos turned it down, saying that Dom wouldn't accept it. Later that week, Marcus officially signed up to the COG and got his uniform, which he wore to Dom's wedding alongside Carlos, who also did the same. Witnessing the two supporting him on his wedding day, Dom also decided he was going to do the same. With that, all three became official Gears soldiers. With Marcus and Carlos now full members of the Gears after successfully passing basic training, they were going to be assigned to C Company of the 26th Royal Tyrant Infantry. Now assigned their roles, the two would be deployed out to the Akastu emulsion fields out within Dushin, and were tasked with defending them from the rival forces of the Union of Independent Republics. Emulsion was the precious resource of the world, a form of fuel that completely revolutionized the way everything worked in the world. But because of that, it had become a political thing, and now both the COG and the UIR were fighting over it at all times, and had been for way too long now. Regardless of why the war was going on still to this date, Marcus and C Company were flown out on the Corva CC-4005, but just before landing, Marcus read a letter sent from his father prior to his deployment. Marcus's major, Helena Stroud, witnessed Marcus reading this letter and went up to speak with him. Stroud, of course, being a loyal friend of Adam, and fought alongside him before he got sent back home. Speaking to Marcus, Stroud asked if Adam still worked all day long, which Marcus said he did, and Stroud replied that his old lieutenant says hi and that he should take a day off from the lab sometimes. Carlos found this funny and commented after she walked away that she was one to talk, but she never took off time either. Also going on to say that he heard that her own daughter named Anya had joined up as well and had become an officer cadet, and that whole idea excited Carlos. Marcus, however, didn't really comment on this, but allowed Carlos to talk about how attractive Anya was. After that, they had arrived at their mission area. Stroud addressed all of the COG soldiers, stating that this wasn't training anymore, and they had to have their wits about them, to look after one another and stay sharp at all times. The last thing she wanted to do was tell families their sons or daughters were killed in battle. Upon exiting the Corva, the COG members finally witnessed the thing that had started this war, the emulsion, and immediately began their patrol around the refinery. During this, Carlos asked what Marcus's dad wrote to him in his letter. Marcus told him that his dad was still talking about life after the war, about him going to university, and making it seem like he was just taking a gap year away from his studies. The other Gears got involved, inquiring about his father, specifically Private Quinn, who asked if he was the top scientist at the DRA and also what he was working on. However, Marcus didn't actually know what his dad was working on. He was never told anything, as it was all classified. But as the group were discussing the project, Corporal Maxson of their group immediately came in, stating the UIR Chimera had been detected and was doing high altitude recon of the plant. 2 days later, the group still had not seen any action whilst out there, and they were becoming frustrated by it. At night, Marcus and some others were sent out on patrol once again, where Carlos would go on to state that he wished someone would just shoot at them so that they could get the waiting over with. Marcus tried to calm him down and stated that it would happen soon, they just needed to be alert and patient. Carlos became anxious that he was going to seize up when the fighting started, but Marcus was adamant they would be fine, and when it does kick off, it would all come back to him and he would be able to fight at his best. Just after that, Maxson went on to state the plant workers could hear a bike in the north perimeter gates, and that Marcus and his squad needed to go and check it out. Marcus stated they couldn't see or hear anything out there, but Maxson was adamant something was out there. Whilst talking, a bike immediately zoomed out from under a pipeline and opened fire on them, in which C Company also opened fire on it. Alongside that, other indie soldiers also appeared, opening fire on the Gears, forcing them into cover behind the pipes. Immediately, Maxson was hit in the throat by one of the indie bullets, and with that happening, Marcus told Quinn to go and see him, asking Carlos to give him cover fire. Carlos immediately hated this, questioning what Marcus was doing, calling him crazy in the process, but Marcus immediately hit back, telling him to just do it, and immediately jumped over the pipe and charged at the Indies. Shooting two of the Indies, a pack horse arrived as backup, driven by Sergeant Bernadetta Mataki, with Sergeant Daniel Kennan on the gun. Now saved thanks to their actions, Marcus realized that the Indies had blown up the emulsion wells, but realizing there was nothing they could do there, they focused on helping Maxson up onto the pack horse to get him to safety. Whilst loading him onto the pack horse, Marcus turned to Carlos and asked him not to mention this at all to his dad, where Carlos promised him he wouldn't. Back at the hospital, however, Marcus waited to make sure Maxson would be okay, but sadly news came to him from Bernie that Maxson hadn't made it. Hit hard by this news, Marcus went on to state that this was a terrifying start to his first tour of duty. But Bernie tried to help him by stating that he had stopped them from blowing all of the pipelines, but Marcus was having none of it. He had lost someone because of this, and that meant he had failed. But once again, Bernie jumped in and said that he will lose people when on missions, and it will never stop hurting, but they had a job to do, and because of it, they have to go out every day to do it regardless of what had happened before. With that realization, Marcus continued his patrol led by Bernie, whilst also coming to the realization that they were fighting to make sure the lights stayed on back at home. A week passed and the patrols continued for Marcus as well as Carlos and Quinn as they ventured around in their pack horse. The three continued to talk about Marcus's father, asking him to create a new fuel source that people wouldn't have to fight over. But Carlos quickly pointed out that all fuel resources were being fought over since time began, so it wouldn't really matter. During that debate, Control would come through and tell the group that chimeras were detected along the border, leading to the group pulling over next to some pipelines and trying to spot them. Unfortunately, the group couldn't see anything, so Quinn climbed up onto a pipeline to try and get a better view, whilst also asking Marcus what he thought they were doing out there. As the two talked about what the enemy could be doing, Quinn also spoke about how his mum back home was sending him some mail, but before he could talk more about this, Quinn would be shot in the head by a sniper, falling off the pipeline and hitting the floor directly in front of Marcus and Carlos. Marcus was told immediately to get down by Carlos, who cradled Quinn in his arms, absolutely devastated at the loss of him, stating that it was just his first week. He didn't even get to be part of a firefight. He was just shot by an isolated sniper. Heading back to the base once again, Helena Stroud called Marcus into her office to inquire about his mental health. Marcus claimed that he didn't feel anyone would be okay watching their friend be killed in front of his very eyes, especially on the first week of deployment. Helena realized he was in a dark place, but told him not to take it too much to heart. It wasn't his fault at all, and also that this is just how his father responded when losing someone as well. Marcus then went on to say that he would just have to get used to this, but Helena quickly remarked that he wouldn't, and that he shouldn't have to either, but he will learn of a way to deal with it in his own way like the rest of them do. The way that Marcus's father had was by leaving the army once and for all to look into building weapons. This talk with Helena really helped Marcus not get over the loss of his friends, but to help understand his father a lot better, and with that Helena ordered him to call his dad, as he shouldn't ever leave things unsaid. There might not be another chance to speak to him because who knows what tomorrow might bring. With that, Marcus called his dad utilizing one of the military base's phones. Surprised by this, Adam immediately asked if Marcus was okay, and upon that question, Marcus explained everything that had happened. Adam immediately empathized with his son and apologized for what he had experienced. As the two continued to catch up, Marcus asked him how his project was going, where Adam replied it was going okay, and eventually he would get there with it. A year passed after the events of the emulsion fields, and Marcus, as well as the other members of the 26 RTI, were sent to defend the island of Aroma from the UIR. Not long after being deployed there, Marcus heard news that one of the villages had been completely massacred by the UIR and only left a few survivors. With that in mind, when on patrol, Marcus noticed one of the island's natives in the area. This individual was named Tai Kaliso, and he had been shadowing him with a bow and arrow for quite some time. Marcus had been aware of him for a while as well, and eventually when the two came face to face, he told him so. Warning him not to fire on him, Marcus explained that he was extremely sorry for what he had gone through and the loss of his village, and that the COG were there to fight off UIR from here as well as the South Islands, and that he could help them and also get his revenge. Marcus also went on to state that, "We're not saints, but we are going to win this war, and I'd rather have you on the winning side." Realizing Ty didn't really have any options left, he accepted Marcus's offer and joined the COG, being directly placed into C Company. Another year passed and Marcus had been promoted to corporal and was sent out to the base alongside the Surfearth Maranday border with all of C Company. Winter had hit this area hard during this point in time, but Marcus refused to wear a helmet every day. Instead, the regulations allowed him to wear a do-rag, and that is exactly what he did, making it an iconic look for him. Together with Carlos, they were both tasked to work alongside Sniper Team 30 to protect a pipeline from being sabotaged once again. Out on their travels, the team were told that someone had been digging animal traps along the pipeline and had been doing so for about half an hour, and they had to be checked out. When arriving, the traps looked pretty legitimate, but it was still unclear and could have been a bomb placement. But suddenly, as they were looking at the traps, a ski bike arrived at one of them. Marcus, whilst watching, quickly reminded Carlos that they were unable to cross the border in Marandé as it was technically a neutral nation. So instead of doing anything, they needed to keep an eye on the guy before acting. Noticing he was taking stuff out of his bag, the man eventually got spooked and started to run. Marcus and Carlos, however, gave chase, which took them over the border. Eventually, they caught him off the bike, and Marcus quickly claimed that they had to take him alive, but Carlos, whilst holding him down, noticed him bring out a weapon from his jacket, and because of that, Carlos had to respond and stabbed him immediately. After the scuffle, the group took him back to the APC and searched the body, finding not only explosives, but some important papers as well. As the intel guy on the APC praised the two for their actions and their findings, Marcus was furious at Carlos for crossing the border, but Carlos didn't say anything back on the ride. Upon getting back to the base, Marcus went on to apologize, but Carlos realized his own mistake and acknowledged that he could have brought Marandé into this war, but he was too focused on getting the guy and making a difference. Marcus agreed with what he said and stated back to him that once winter had ended and full ground warfare started once again, they would be back to making that difference. 9 months after that specific mission, Marcus and C Company were sent out on a training program out within the Marinette naval base. All they knew was that they were going to be sent out on an unnamed operation and that it involved a beach landing. Whilst training, Carlos tripped and fell immediately into the water when exiting his vehicle. Marcus would go on to grab him and pull him to shore whilst checking he was okay, but immediately witnessing they had both stopped, Helena Stroud screamed at them for stopping and ordered them to carry on. As they did continue, Marcus again asked if Carlos was okay, where he responded that he was fine, but very angry that he fell and had to be picked up. Marcus was sympathetic, but also stated it was their first time trying the landing at night, and he probably just tripped on a hole or something else. As the training continued, however, Carlos struggled some more as he continued to cough up water. Marcus became increasingly worried about him dying of secondary drowning and wanted him to seek medical care. However, Carlos refused and carried on training, meeting up with the rest of the unit in the woods. After the exercise ended, all of the company went back to eat, including Bernie, Ty, Helena, and her daughter Cadet Anya Stroud. Talking to Carlos, Marcus went on to state that Helena was an absolute psycho, but Carlos told him that she might be, but she wins, and that is exactly what they needed. Eventually, after training had ended, C Company were moved to Fresnel Naval Base and were kept in their quarters until they could board the CNV Kelowna, which arrived at 5 in the morning 2 days before the operation. As Marcus and Carlos waited for their ride to arrive, they discussed how Dom was doing, with Carlos stating they had been writing to each other and that Maria was due to give birth any time now. Marcus was also asked if he had called his dad. He had, but his dad went really quiet on the phone, which wasn't new anymore. But Marcus quickly realized he hadn't told him he was shipping out on the Kelowna, and on top of that, his dad didn't even ask either, leaving him confused and a little bit hurt. As Helena entered the scene, Marcus called all of the gears to attention, but his focus went straight onto Anya Stroud, worrying that her heels were going to trip her up on the ramps. The time of boarding the ship came, and all of the cog soldiers' families turned up to wave them off. During that, Marcus noticed Carlos's parents were there, but to his big surprise, Adam was also there, which made Marcus happy as he waved to him, but also a bit confused, because how did he know Marcus was going to be there, deploying at this very time, leading him to believe that Adam already knew about this operation. Finally, upon boarding, the cogs were told their objective. This was to stop the UIR reinforcements from reaching Aspho Point from Aspho Fields. This was all whilst the cog commando team, which included Dom, secured vital information on weapons research from the facility. Hearing all of this, Marcus knew that Adam must have been part of the planning of this whole operation and hadn't told him about it for obvious reasons. This was to be a vital moment within the whole war. Not long before the operation began, whilst the rest slept, Carlos finally got the message that his niece, Sylvia Santiago, had been born, which led Marcus and the rest of the Gears to congratulate him all before venturing into the hangar deck to wait for the go order. The time came as Helena went over the operation one last time, and Marcus checked on Carlos once again to see if he was going to be alright, in which Carlos said he was going to be fine when they landed. Eventually the Gears watched as the divisionary attack started, which also meant Dom's mission had begun as well, and now it was their turn. Luckily for Carlos, the landing went well, unlike in training, and 20 minutes later they were set up behind a machine gun position. Worried about his brother and the lack of communication out there, Marcus reassured him that their mission was going to be fine, and this was how the operation was meant to be. Quickly after, the group spotted an Indie Commando squad near Aspho Point and reported it through comms. Not only that, but Marcus and Carlos spotted vehicle movement in the tree line near the field, and with that Helena ordered Marcus to load up a long spear to fire. More and more Indies started to appear for the cogs as shooting started breaking out at Aspho Point. Joining the fight, Marcus loaded the long spear and suddenly spotted Indie Asps approaching the battlefield. Marcus was worried that these vehicles would prevent the cog from getting that vital research and tried desperately to find a way to stop them. All hell was kicking off during this point, and the cogs were being fired upon and ambushed by so many different Indie vehicles and soldiers. Regardless, Carlos and Marcus continued to fire their long spears on the Indies, but it seemed like it was becoming hopeless as more and more vehicles appeared and their ammunition was getting low. Sergeant Daniel Keenan would be killed during this fight as well, which caught Carlos off guard, but Marcus tried desperately to get him to focus on the mission at hand. Only 2 long spears were left, however, and Helena had to give the order for them to be used. The cog were desperately waiting for Dom to extract and the mission would be all done, but they were getting worried as more and more of their planes were being shot down during all of this, leaving them without the support they needed. Here Helena gave the order to Marcus to take out the Asps that were causing all of the havoc, but as Marcus grabbed one of the 2 remaining long spears, the first shot he did completely missed. He then grabbed the second one and once again completely missed, meaning the Asps were still fully active, and now the cogs had no more long spears to use. Marcus was distraught by this error as he begged for forgiveness, but Helena stated it wasn't his fault, but someone now needed to make their way across the battlefield and drop grenades on top of the Asps. Marcus and Carlos immediately jumped to volunteer, but Helena shut them down instantly and said she would do it instead. As the Gears watched her go to the first Asp, she successfully planted the grenade within it, but unfortunately her webbing got caught on the vehicle, leaving her stuck on it and sadly died within the explosion. Marcus was shocked by what had happened and became immediately worried about Anya and how she was going to take the news, especially as she was providing mission control over the comms. Not only that, there was still one more Asp that needed to be dealt with so that they could have their vital air support to take out the Chimeras quickly, heading to Aspho Point. Eventually the commando team, which included Dom, destroyed Aspho Point and their extraction finally began, but once again their petrels would not reach the backup site to destroy it. Despite being given the order to extract, Marcus requested permission to take out the final Asp as it started to move into position to attack those extracting, as well as trying to help the Chimeras hunt down the commandos. Being given the green light, Marcus, Carlos, Jakovs, Hernan and Marasin all ventured to the road where the Asp was moving and attacked it with 5 gut puncher grenade launchers. This looked like a success, but someone remained within it still and continued on to the battlefield. Witnessing this, Carlos, Jakovs and Hernan jumped up and charged the Asp, but as they did, all 3 were hit, with Jakovs and Hernan being killed instantly. Carlos rolled off the road and went into a ditch, telling all of the others he was absolutely fine. Witnessing this, Marcus attempted the same and somehow managed to get to the Asp, hijacking it and charging it into Indie lines, destroying all of their vehicles and soldiers with it. Despite being hit by Indie light armor, Marcus continued on and devastated the Indie lines for 10 whole minutes, not allowing anything to slow him down. The Chimeras and airborne assets were removed and Dom had been saved as a result. Returning back, Marcus was hailed a hero by Bernie, but his focus immediately went back to Carlos, asking if he had returned back to them, but he was told that he was still near the bridge firing on the Indies. Marcus was furious by this and immediately ran back to him, with Bernie joining him. Calling out to Carlos, he asked if he could meet back at the rally point, but this is where Carlos stated his injuries were too bad and he couldn't move. Horrified by this, Marcus screamed why he hadn't told anyone earlier, but Carlos replied because he knew Marcus would come to his aid and that it was pointless. He knew he was already dying. Marcus didn't want to accept this at all and continued to try and make his way to him, fighting off the Indies in the area still. Despite being ordered, Marcus was not giving up, but Carlos pleaded with him, stating he needed to just make sure Dom was okay and to look after him. During that, Carlos was hit once again by Indie fire, and suddenly the tone shifted as he pleaded with Marcus to put him out of his misery. Marcus continued on, however, stating he was not going to leave him, but as Carlos stated he was going to get himself killed, he would go on to pull out a grenade and detonate it, killing himself instantly, as well as destroying the bridge, stopping the Indie vehicles from reaching the extraction point. Marcus, upon reaching Carlos's death site, was distraught and collapsed over his body in grief. Bernie covered up his remains and the two took him back to the extraction zone to wait for their evacuation to the CNV Pomeroy. Marcus stuck to himself whilst here, but Bernie joined him to say that Dom had made it and he had also saved the lives of the rest of his unit in the process. Marcus was pleased by this and stated that he was a true gear, with Bernie responding saying she would tell him about the death of his brother. Marcus immediately stopped her and said it was his job as he was an honorary Santiago. On that realization, Marcus began to start crying silently and asked Bernie what he was meant to do without him and that he was pretty much a brother to him. He also wondered if there was more he could have done to save him, wondering if taking the Aspho was worth it and that maybe if he hadn't focused on that, he could have saved him. But Bernie said there was nothing he could have done. He did the right thing and to not dwell on what had happened. The two then decided to lie to Dom about how Carlos had died, as they didn't want him to know that his mistake cost two others to die. Instead, he was a hero, and that was that. As the Sea Ravens arrived, Marcus made sure that Carlos's body was the first to go onto it, and when they landed on the Pomeroy, Dom was there immediately waiting for them, and Marcus saw his face drop when Carlos did not emerge from it. With that, Marcus went right up to Dom and tearfully informed him that Carlos had died in battle, saying, Dom, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. 5 weeks had passed since the attack on Aspho Point, and because of his heroic actions, Marcus was promoted to sergeant and was invited to an awards ceremony at the House of Sovereigns, where he and Dom would be awarded the highest honour in the COG army, the Embry Star, for what they had done in the operation. Carlos and Helena would also be honoured with one posthumously, with Dom accepting Carlos's and Anya accepting her mother's. Anya was hounded by the press during this, but both Dom and Marcus protected her throughout it. After the event was over, Dom and Marcus both went to visit Carlos's grave, and when there found Lieutenant Colonel Victor Hoffman there as well, who paid his respects to the two. During this, Marcus did not say anything at all, but Dom instead invited the commanding officer to dine with both Adam Fenix and the Santiago parents. Hoffman, however, turned down the invite, but said he would like to have a drink with them sometime. Instead, he just left them alone to say their final goodbyes to Carlos and wish them all the best. Now alone, Marcus dug a small hole in the grave and placed Carlos's Embry Star within it, all whilst crying over his lost brother. Hoffman, however, was still watching as this all happened, and witnessing Marcus do this left a lasting impression on him. As the dinner went ahead later that evening, it was tense and awkward between Marcus and Adam, and after it ended, Marcus volunteered to make sure that Anya got home safely after she had too much to drink, and as the two went back, they also spent the night together. From this point on, the two had a secret romantic relationship, a relationship that had to remain secret because once again, the regulations were against this type of thing. 2 years after that horrible operation, one that did change the fate of the war but came at a massive cost for Dom and Marcus, the whole of C Company was now sent to the independent Republic of Berlin. Whilst there, Marcus was in a squad with Dom, Ty and Pad as they were sent to Gatto City to make sure it was secure. Immediately upon getting there, the group engaged fire with the Indie soldiers held up within the ruined city and became pinned down because of it. Pad was sent to get to the nearby roof and Marcus and the others would give him cover. Here he told Ty to use their last RPG RPG on the Indies to make sure it was the best type of cover fire, and Pad could use the smoke from it as cover to run through the Indie lines. The group meticulously sought out all of the remaining Indie soldiers and eventually wiped them all out, radioing back to the command that Gatto City was now fully secure and that now they would meet back up with the rest of the unit and Tenla. As the group started walking out of the city, Dom had a moment of sadness as he really felt the war would have ended a few months after the Aspho Point operation, but now it was still going, and he felt like Carlos had died for absolutely no reason. Marcus said thinking like that is never going to help, and in fact the whole operation helped his dad's research progress massively, saving him years of work, so it was absolutely for something. Dom then asked if Marcus knew anything more about this research his dad was working on, but Marcus simply responded that top secret meant top secret to Adam. 5 months later, Marcus and C Company was sent out again on another patrol. During this, they would overlook a Furlin town that hadn't been bombed by the Indies. Dom acknowledged this and was thankful for it, but Marcus told him not to jinx it. During this discussion, the convoy suddenly stopped and a radio was playing. As the Gears listened to it, they all called Marcus over, stating that his father had finally done it. As Marcus listened to the radio, it was announced that Chairman Thomas Daliel had met with Premier Yuri Desenchenko of the UIR to talk about the UIR's surrender. This was all because of the COG's new weapon named the Hammer of Dawn and how it had been deployed on the battlefield, the weapon of course being created by Adam Fenix. As the Gears all celebrated, Ty told Marcus that his father had found his true path. But Marcus was factual and said that the war wasn't over yet and this peace process could still take a good few weeks. Moments after telling the other soldiers that, Indies hit them with a shelling bombardment, destroying a lot of the convoy and the town below. Dom was shocked by this, thinking the Indies were insane for attacking them when the war was pretty much over, but Marcus quickly responded to him by saying if the roles were reversed, they'd be doing the same thing and would fight until the last, also saying that the Indies probably thought it was just COG propaganda. With no other choice, the COG started opening fire on the Indies as well, but Lieutenant Preston told Marcus that the captain was trying to offer the Indies an informal ceasefire. Marcus, however, doubted that this would work for them. Whilst this discussion was going on, several Gears were hit by mortar fire, but then silence. The Indies stopped attacking after hearing that the surrender was actually real. Marcus could not believe it. He was right there as the Pendulum Wars came to an end. Decades of bloody warfare now over, and everyone could go back home and live their lives in peace once again. The COG had done it, and it was all thanks to Marcus's father and his development of the Hammer of Dawn. But Marcus was still anxious that this wasn't truly the end and something would kick off again at some point. 3 hours passed, however, and Marcus observed through the binoculars UIR troops surrendering in front of COG soldiers, and upon witnessing this, turned to Don and told him it wasn't in vain. The next day came around and C Company moved further down into the city and together gathered in silence as the clocks turned to noon and the official surrender took effect. The war was now over and Marcus was free to go back home and start a new life, one where he was free from fighting endless conflicts and losing good friends along the way. Or so he thought anyway, because just only 6 weeks later after the Pendulum Wars, the Locust Horde, the very monsters Marcus's mum had been researching all of those years ago, had emerged onto the surface and made it their mission to destroy everything in their path and take over the whole of Serra. This of course would be known as Emergence Day, and within just 26 hours, 25% of the human population were killed by these brutal monsters. Marcus was of course caught completely off guard by this attack, just enjoying life as a civilian once again, but it was clear that he was one of the lucky ones to survive and regrouped with the COG once again, along with Dom, to protect the civilians in the Kelowna district. What happens during those early days will be something we explore in a later episode. But for now, this has been the story of Marcus Fenix, from when he was a young, privileged child all the way to becoming a COG hero who helped bring an end to the Pendulum Wars that had plagued Serra for decades. I want to say a big thanks for watching this video once again. I'm super excited for E-Day and really hope it is an interesting story to go along with the iconic Gears combat. Let me know if you're excited as well and what you'd like to see within that game, and maybe what you'd like to see in future videos as well. A big thanks to my patrons once again for their endless support, including my small fishes, my big fish Anthony Bonfiglio, my YouTube channel Wise1, Sith Lord 906, Video Game Player 7555, the Nanotarium, and Amanda Berlin, my sharks Dan F, Lorena R, and Hazy Thoughts, and my Megalodons Sinus. But that is all for now. Thank you once again for watching, and I shall see you all in the next one. Cheers.